Shameless. United in the Europa League. Europa League. Me tell them one time and we say Europa League. Europa.
Sevilla 3, Manchester United 0, guys. It was, God, we've run out of words because it was poor, but I'm tired of saying poor. It was, yeah, I'm not going to say it, but it was a very bad performance from Manchester United. I think most of us came into this game expecting to go through, let alone a result. There's too many things to talk about. De Gea, a player who's been talked about a lot this season. I think everyone's seeing a lot of progression in our players. When we look at Wan-Bissaka, who was poor today, but when we look at Wan-Bissaka, who's definitely progressed in terms of his movement and creating overloads. When we look at players like even the Freds of this world, who have definitely progressed from last season and definitely suit this style of football. I think a lot of the time people tend to forget that there's just too much in this team that needs to be changed. And even then, so we're not a final product. So now that we're seeing other players starting to progress, De Gea, his distribution being exposed a lot more now because, look, players are injured. Maguire and Lindelof today, yes, they played well against Forest, but stylistically a different team. Forest did not press us like Sevilla done. They pressed the hell out of us last week. And we didn't necessarily deal with it all too well. Yes, in the first half, we definitely should have scored 3-4 goals in that game. And then second half, we drop. Yes, Bruno gets a yellow card and 10 men down, and it was poor. It was poor, but today, I look at players like Eriksen, out of possession, just not there. Again, when I talk about final products, I mean, not just final product in terms of the game, but final product in terms of the team. We are not in a position where players like Eriksen, even Sancho, can stand out to the best of their ability. Jadon Sancho at Dortmund, a player who played in a very dominant style of football, possession-based, tiki-taka, if you want to call it that, one-touch football. We saw it today from Sancho in the first half, but out of possession, gets bypassed way too easily, and it's poor. Eriksen, again, out of possession, a player who is stats in terms of duels won is poor. But options. A lot of people are blaming Ten Hag. We saw it in the chat today. I can't really blame him all that much. What options were there? Yes, maybe you could have started Luke Shaw. He brings him on. People say, yeah, but he brought him on, so he's definitely fit. I don't think so. You can't just bring a player in for 90 minutes when he's been out for a bit and expect him to play completely well. And look, Maguire and Lindelof, they played well. He played the same team except Bruno was out, but we definitely missed Bruno in midfield. Bruno is an all-round midfielder. He's almost this player where when we talk about De Gea, we talk about one of them old-style goalkeepers who's a shot stopper, but not the same case with Bruno. Bruno's good everywhere. A lot of the time, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you had midfielders who were good everywhere. They were good attacking midfielders, but they were also good defensively. They were good everywhere. And Bruno's one of them players, and you still need those players in this day and age. Eriksen, he's not really good as a box-to-box. I pretty much prefer him as a 10, but when you've got Bruno who can play anywhere, on the right, on the left, number 10, number 8, he's very versatile. Sancho, you can see him in the 10, you can see him on the left, you can see him on the right, but again, a player who's not really suited to a lot of these teams who press and they're very intense. And we saw today, not many players dealt well with it. But you saw Sancho at times in tight spaces dealing well in those situations, but we're not dominating the ball. We're not dominating the possession. Yeah, we might have had 4 or 5% more possession than them, but did we really? I mean, Sevilla were a lot better on the ball. They pressed us. The game was broken down constantly. And in transition, we were poor. And it just seems like now it's common sense. Look, last season we saw Maguire, Lindelof, that midfield. Casemiro was poor today. He was poor, but he's had a great season with us. He's changed our midfield. But it just shows that Maguire, Lindelof are problems. I don't think Lindelof was terrible, but he wasn't great either. Towards the end of the game, he started losing his head. Maguire, I mean, that first goal, he calls for the ball, looks over his right shoulder, but he doesn't look over his left shoulder. And then, done. 3 players on him. It's just, it had to happen, innit? It just had to happen. And of course, De Gea with a terrible touch. I don't know what he was doing there. But the game was slipping away from us. There was no clear-cut opportunity for us. And then you see Veikos come on, Martial. Martial, unfortunately, he has to go. We can't rely on him. I love him so much. I think he's such a good player. Dropping into those that number 6 area where he picks up the ball and drives forward and creates that link-up, something that Veikos does, but doesn't have the pace or the recovery, or, you know, he has the movement, But that pace and the ability to just get forward and even crosses into the box, aerially, Weghorst is not the player you want him to be, because we're not even putting crosses into the box even when he's on the pitch. This whole season has been like that. So, lack of options. Ten Hag, yeah, maybe I personally would have taken off Maguire, put Luke Shaw at left centre-back, and kept Delot at left-back, because I do think Delot at left-back was doing somewhat well. I don't think he was terrible. I think it's a different problem on the left. Inverted. He offered great movement against Forest. And yes, it's a different game, but in transition, maybe he would have made those runs into midfield. Cut in, shoot. I don't know, maybe. It's very hard to think of it now because we've lost the game terribly. But we're just picking up the little things now because we were poor. But guys, it is what it is. And unfortunately, against Brighton, hopefully Luke Shaw's not missing, because today he was limping a bit and it seems like he might not be available. We'll have to wait and see. But Maguire's suspended for that game. We could be in a position where one of the midfielders might have to play centre-back. We're missing a lot of players now. We're missing, and it's not a surprise, really. I think it was incredibly surprising to see players like Wan-Bissaka and Dalot and Bruno, who have managed to play so many games this season. And I know Wan-Bissaka was out first half of the season, Dalot was out for a bit as well, but they've played a lot of games continuously, especially Bruno. Bruno's played a lot of games, Anthony as well. These players have played so many games and somehow have not gotten injured. And hopefully they don't, because Bruno, we got shagged last week against Sevilla. He should not have gotten a yellow card and been suspended for this game. We missed him. We missed that engine in midfield. And a player who is, Bruno's one of our best players. And I'm not saying Eriksen isn't, I'm not saying Sabitzer isn't, but Sabitzer, again, yes, he's an engine in midfield, but he's not particularly amazing at one thing. I don't think he is. I think he's a decent passer of the ball. He's got a good engine, good presser of the ball, good shot on him, but he's not sublime at one thing. When we look at vision, when we look at what you want from your midfielder, Bruno has that fantastic through ball. He's fantastic with passes in between the lines. Eriksen as well. But again, today, the passes in between the lines were dreadful. But again, shout out Sevilla. They were compact. They were playing this 4-5-1 formation. Nasri comes in for them. He done bits for Morocco in the World Cup. And you saw it today. His movement was, he was dangerous today. And from set pieces, they were very, very dangerous. They were winning almost everything. The second balls, the duels, we were losing everything. And you could see the intensity, we couldn't keep up. And we're a Premier League side. We always talk about how Premier League is the best league in the world. The more intense, the more powerful. But it didn't seem like that today. If no one didn't know who each team was, you would say, what do you think the Premier League side is? They would probably say Sevilla. They were more intense. They were more physical. They had more in them. And away from home this season, we've been poor. So guys, it is what it is. Let's see what happens against Brighton. But I hope we get most of our players back fit. Martin is out for the rest of the season. Varane, we still don't know. I think the problem is that we have a lot of players who don't work well together because we're not in this final product. We don't have a team that's ready to compete with Man City or even the Arsenals because there's too many inconsistencies. Maguire can't be pressed and deal well with it. Martinez in some situations there, he would have dealt with that. He would have turned his body, open up, pass. Maguire doesn't do that. He's too slow. He doesn't react quick enough. He doesn't look. His awareness is not there. Sancho, again, good in tight spaces, can release the ball quickly, quite agile. But again, if we're not dominating the game out of possession, he's not there. You could see that Delot was being left exposed, even though he wasn't ripped today. Sancho was struggling to get back and he gets bypassed too easily. Eriksen out of possession, the same thing. But then you've got players like Sabitzer who can deal with that. Fred, who's good out of possession, who's very active, but on the ball, not the best. So there's a lot that needs to be changed in this team. But we've had a good season. It is what it is. Let's focus on FA Cup and the league. Let's move on.